Basic Research and Theory, Panel Session 1, Transforming Education with Immersive Learning, Bridging the Skills Gap and Removing Accessibility Barriers, Part 2, presented by our good partner friends at AIXR. I'm going to toss it right over to David.
Thanks very much, Heather. Welcome, everyone. It's great to be here at AIXR 21. Hope you enjoyed the previous panel session, and obviously some of this material will continue that good work. So this is the second part of a two-part series on transforming education with immersive learning. This part we're going to look at removing the accessibility barriers, and we're going to look at accessibility from a number of different perspectives. As Heather mentioned, we're affiliated with AIXR, the Academy of International Extended Reality, and the Education and Training Advisory Group associated with that organization. My name is David Trainor, and I'm the founder of SentiReal. So we maybe start with some intros. So I'm the founder of SentiReal, which is UK-based software and media production house, looking at creative immersive learning and training experiences across a number of different industries. Now branching into creating no-code authoring tools to allow educators to create their own artificial intelligence powered immersive training experiences. So we have a wonderful panel with us today to talk about the accessibility topic. So maybe just start by perhaps asking Tony to introduce himself.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Tony Bevilacqua. I'm the founder and CEO of Cognitive 3D. We're based in Vancouver, British Columbia. We focus on analytics for virtual, augmented, and mixed reality, which means we collect behavioral data on how people are interacting within 3D space, and we help understand human performance within various training and simulations.
Excellent, thank you, Tony. And Greg?
Yeah, good morning or good evening to everyone, and depending on the side you are. My name is Greg. I'm CEO and founder at Magos. Magos is a deep tech startup focused in human-computer interaction, including hardware, a very detailed and finger tracking and wearable solution, and also dealing with aspects of virtual reality and augmented reality in terms of training and design. So our goal is to revolutionize the interaction within extended reality. And not only that, we have some aspects in robotics projects like teleoperation and robots. So we're involved in the data management of the solution as well.
That's great. Thank you, Greg. And Aditya?
Yeah, hi. Good morning and good evening. My name is Aditya. I'm the CTO and co-founder of KlipVR Immersive Technologies. We create VR edutainment content for school kids. Our aim is to provide VR for every kid in India and make it affordable for everyone.
That's great. Thank you. And welcome to all our panel members.
Thank you.
So I thought I would continue maybe by just giving a sense, perhaps, of some of the topics that this discussion might range over. We want to look at accessibility from a couple of different perspectives. One is the accessibility of extended reality technologies and experiences from an educator's perspective or an organizational perspective. In terms of what has changed recently, in terms of making this medium more accessible to the education community. But we also want to look at accessibility from perhaps a more traditional sense of that word, perhaps from an app development point of view, i.e. accessibility of extended reality for learners. So perhaps learners maybe with disabilities or particular sensory preferences or aspects of making XR apps more friendly and more usable for the widest possible learner community. So some of the things we cover as part of that will probably extend maybe some of the conversations from the previous panel, but looking around deployment of XR experiences, how do you onboard learners successfully into a new XR experience, evaluation and assessment. So what kind of approaches and practices can we adopt in terms of gathering information about the effectiveness of educational XR experiences and demonstrate how learners' skills are improving and their learning rates are improving through use of this technology. We do intend this to be interdisciplinary, so we're going to try and keep this discussion as relevant for as many different educational disciplines, and even between schools, college-based education and lifelong learning or adult education. So hopefully there will be something for everyone in this talk. You're welcome to enter questions into the chat. I will pause at various points throughout our discussion here and take a few questions that have been entered from the audience into the chat facility. So hopefully that sets the scene and we're ready to move on to our first question, which is, what recent innovations have made extended reality in all its forms easier for educators to access? So we'll drill down into this a little bit, but to start, maybe just some general comments on this, on this topic. So Aditya, perhaps you maybe would like to start on this one.
Yeah, of course, absolutely. There's been many innovation for XR and VR. So our specialization is in VR, so I can put more focus on it. We are providing our services to everybody in India. Actually, our target is to provide VR accessibility to over 100 million school kids. And we are involving everybody from the Animation Institute to every educationist in the school panel to come and visit our studio and take on studio experience and learn everything about VR and how it's been made and what kind of tool we are using. We are going to school with special hardware, so to give demonstrations to them. And on top of that, we are providing the teaching method, providing them learning tools in our studio for them to learn the VR technologies. So from our side, we are want to create awareness and develop the need for everybody to be future ready and learn these new technologies, which will benefit everybody and school kids, especially school kids. We believe that they can learn a lot using VR as a tool, which can complement their curriculum and learn the different difficult topics which they find it very difficult to learn through virtual reality, interactivity, and physics.
That's great. Thank you, Aditya. Tony, any comments to add on this point?
Yeah, so from my perspective, obviously the cost and accessibility of headsets is always an interesting topic that has been kind of helping the adoption of the technology within education. But I think the other thing that's worth noting is that if we look just even a few years ago, creating content or accessing content, it was a matter of figuring out how to be a software engineer, right? And picking up Unity and Unreal and trying to build things. And, I think that that's starting to change. We're seeing a lot more, accessible content authoring tools. What you see is what you get, capabilities. And I think that that's going to be a really important, especially when you're thinking about K-12 and even in the university environment, making these things affordably without having to hire a huge engineering team, I think is really important. We've seen universities and vocational study institutions spend quite a bit of money on building courseware that is really unique to the problem that they're trying to solve. And I think that that's admirable, but not everybody has the capability, facility to do that. So then it's a matter of what are the tools that are going to extend that reach to as many educators as possible.
That's great. Thank you, Tony. So actually, I was interested in, Aditya mentioned at one point about demonstrating sophisticated or bespoke or custom hardware. So Greg, I was wondering if you could pick up on that, because obviously that's an area of particular expertise for you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Let's start with a general idea. Extended reality is trying to digitize the senses, at least started with the headsets to digitize the sight and hearing sense with great results up to now. The headsets are evolving, the cost is going down. The touch sense is something that is in the foreground at the moment with our solution as well, since being in the human-computer interaction sector, and others in the ground. And of course, some other efforts are done to enable other hardware systems or parts to digitize the other senses other than the ones mentioned. So a lot of efforts are done, and the evolution of the hardware components are leading the development of applications, revolutionizing the impact and the whole framework of extended reality evolution and applications, either in the business sector or in the academic one.
Okay, thank you. So interested as well then in terms of, we talked a little bit maybe around recent innovations in XR hardware and devices. I was wondering, is there anything, innovations perhaps in and around the software or apps side, maybe around distribution or aspects like that has now made them easier for educators to access? So does anyone want to perhaps pick up on that point?
Yeah, I can add on this. See, hardware is still developing, and the major player are HTC and Oculus. I follow Warjo. They are making a new hardware, but it's still very expensive for a consumer to purchase and use generally. So I think they are designing it for specific companies to buy it and work on their custom design projects. Still, I believe commonly used hardware is still Oculus, and we are developing most of our product based on Oculus, and there are quite a demand rising for rental-based hardware suppliers. So that kind of request is picking up. So if we provide hardware to consumer, maybe on a rental basis, that can solve the accessibility issue, and once everybody have the hardware, so they can innovate more. So this is what my input is on the hardware. If I answer that correctly.
Yes, thank you. That's an interesting point in terms of the rental or leasing options as well. It obviously provides another means of lowering the barrier to entry for several organizations. So it's that's a great point.
Yeah, because here I can talk about India is still like if you want to give access of virtual reality or XR in schools, they need a lot of devices, 50, 60, 100, 200 maybe. So putting that much of investment is not possible for educational institutes. So they are looking for other alternatives, how they can get access to hardware and software. And that's where we comes and try to solve that solution. So we are trying to create a mobile platform, a mobile VR lab, so that can go in and out of schools and give them proper experience, educate them, teach them, show them our edutainment content, which is parallel to their curriculum in schools. And we are getting a lot of positive response from schools, even the teachers.
That's excellent. It's good to hear. Aditya or Tony, did you have a follow-up point on that?
Yeah, just on the software distribution side, I can speak to this from kind of a commercial perspective. When we think about software and distribution, I think, one of the biggest challenges is getting access to the content you need quickly. And, there is some commercial entities out there that are looking at this from, just a, general business and enterprise perspective. An example would be like Tailspin, who's curating a default set of soft skills training modules that kind of apply across a wide range of enterprise situations. So that's an example of, where you can get access to a library, which I think is really an important aspect of this, and being able to pick things up off the shelf. Another example would be like KlipVR, who has created a library of hard skills training, right? So these are things that are like really, kind of standard across a lot of different industries that are easily picked up by organizations, and you can just license that content and execute that training within your organization. I don't have the best visibility, David, on a similar solution that exists within the education side, but perhaps you do.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that I think that trend that you've mentioned, it's really around, I guess, content aggregation, where content that was maybe in the past you needed to access through several vendors to get suitable coverage for a particular topic or educational theme. There now seem to be a number of organizations that are almost performing this kind of content aggregation or library building type of functionality. So perhaps the content one-stop shop is getting closer to becoming a reality, at least in some educational disciplines. So it's an interesting trend to watch for sure. I suppose one thing maybe to look at the flip side, or to play devil's advocate a little bit, we talked about innovations that are made XR easier for educators to access. Are there any areas that stand out for you where XR still needs to improve to be more accessible and usable for educators? So anyone wants to pick up on that one?
Yeah, I could start with one aspect of the answer. I could say that besides accessibility, need to see if the available equipment and software as well is there to serve the needs first. For example, as Aditya mentioned, the Vario has some specific characteristics that might be very important for some users or some commercial at first, but may academic sector as well. And also the other components like wearable solutions could revolutionize and unlock some constraints that there are today with the hardware. So this is one aspect of ability and the operability of the solutions in the area.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah, the main, I just add here is the main hurdle of accessibility is just the hardware. If you can take example of the Unreal Engine, it's free of cost for anybody to use and create their own content. It's just the hardware which is not easily available in the market, especially in India, and Oculus is not do not have any stores or availability, so you have to procure it from Amazon, and it adds up to the cost. So once the hardware accessibility is solved, there are more players in the market, just like not HTC or Oculus. There should be more players in the market. So I think that will really solve the problem in the future. On the software side, there are many softwares programs which are freely available as open source software. So anybody can learn and have access to the software. But more focus should be given on the hardware side, how we can bring in more hardware to people to use it and experience it and learn it. And that's it from my side.
It's an interesting point, Aditya. So I think we're seeing, in some sense, a disparity or an imbalance between the accessibility between the hardware and software sides, and we're also seeing differences across different regions and geographies in the world as well in terms of availability. It's also another important point to take on board. So thank you for that. So thank you to everyone for their contributions. We're going to move on now to our next question, which is around what can educators do to make deploying XR in their organization easier? So I don't know, perhaps Tony, do you want to start on this one?
Turn my mic on. There you go. Yeah, absolutely. So, I think the first piece within the organization, when I think about scaling these types of experiences within my organization, it really comes down to stakeholders and thinking through all the different kind of components that are required to tie everything together and to build, a scalable distribution methodology for your organization. And that can extend to, distribution and figuring out what kind of tools you're going to use to actually get, experiences on headsets, through to, how are you going to, author those in the first place and manage them moving forward, through to measurement and integration with other tools that exist within the institution itself. So I think that, when you're thinking about these programs, I think it's first important to establish within your organization the value that the technology brings. So that might start with something like a pilot or POC in demonstrating the value proposition that the immersive technology brings. There's obviously cost in both hardware, software, and pure person time in developing these, these simulations and content, and there needs to be a requisite value that's associated with that. So it's always helpful to maybe put together a working group or something like that within your organization of interested educators, but also stakeholders within the organization, which might include folks from IT, perhaps parent advisory, or whatever it might be, that are interested in this particular topic and providing some insight in its deployment within the organization. Fighting against your stakeholders and working within a silo or a vacuum, we've seen fail over and over and over again. So I think it's important to kind of treat this as a program, take steps as you move through your deployment process, and think about the value side of the equation, and then how you're going to get to the full scalability of content distribution.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you. So Greg, I'm wondering as well too, because I imagine a lot of your solutions that because they involve particular hardware that maybe they're kind of special deployment arrangements that need to be in place to make those deployments successful. So from an educational standpoint, what things have you seen in and around deployment, and what can educators do to make those deployments go more smoothly?
Yeah, first of all, yeah, as far as the specialized hardware, as you mentioned, capabilities, this is not easy for everyone to be aware of, what a product can do, what is the differentiation structure, and match the components based on needs. This is the one part which is difficult. On the other side, the better documentation of the hardware, especially if it is from a startup like we are, or from a mature company like headsets providers, documentation and is very crucial in order for everyone to be able to use it properly and to set up a play area, for example, and a room in order to deploy the proof of concept, as Tony mentioned. Crucial and very important. And after that, there are some software techniques that need to be taken into account, and this is also responsibility of the provider, like Magos does, for example, to deploy the well-established SDKs in order to be able for educators to deploy the proof of concept or the developer, and also to inform from the persons involved how they can better use the solution in order to provide the best possible result and have the best outcomes.
That's great. Thank you very much. So Aditya, do you want to pick up on some of these general points around deployments and some of the practical things that educators can do to make deployments happen more smoothly?
Yeah, I agree with Greg on many points. The same thing what we are doing exactly is providing them a lot of hardware and software support for them to create their own concept and ideas and try to present it to us. And we buy them a lot of library stuff so that they can study and learn the immersive technologies and come up with ideas and concepts which we can make it more mature in our organization. So our support is to give as much access to the hardware, software, ideas, customization of any program which they want, learning tools all over the web, whatever they can get hands on. So we provide all these tools for them to learn and try to come up with their ideas and innovations and try to give them free hand to develop XR, VR, XR, MR the way they want to do. So we believe like slowly and steadily we can build confidence in them, and sooner or later in a couple of years we will have a team which can create awesome stuff and which we can present to the open world.
Wonderful, thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
One thing I'm obviously conscious of the fact, given the kind of recent pandemic and COVID situation, that actually some, as was alluded to by the previous panel, sometimes these kind of deployments now need to consider additional factors, whether it's around hygiene or safety and so on. So I wonder if anyone have any follow-up points on that. What things have changed or been added now from a deployment perspective for educators that need to be considered given those aspects?
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
okay. Go ahead.
sorry, I was just going to say, I think the last panel spoke a little bit about this, and they spoke about, clean box and some of the other things that are going on. I think one trend that I would mention just from our observations as, an analytics company is that, a lot of enterprises and educators are changing their deployment strategies. We originally saw a lot of interest in tethered devices. We saw a lot of interest in building labs and physical spaces and fixed locations around, controlling, where the simulation and training or education was going to occur. And now we've seen just this mass exodus of moving to all-in-one. And looking at this as more of a distributed model and thinking about devices as potentially being more personal. And these ideas were, it was just too expensive. We can't do that. That's not, it's not something that we can make work. But, once COVID happened, the conversation was accelerated. And, we see a pretty substantial move into the all-in-one space now.
Yeah, that's interesting. Certainly from our perspective, we would have seen a similar trend, and even a hybrid trend where potentially users are interested in a certain level or class of experience, perhaps with a tethered headset in a centralized location or training room, but with the option of doing additional or refresher type training, perhaps from a home-based scenario or a remote location, using a standalone headset, or even non-immersive facilities as well. So some of these hybrid approaches are becoming, I guess, popular as well as people's working and learning habits have changed.
It wasn't like a completely unknown concept. Like, we have a customer that works in the electrical space, and they had thought about all-in-one well before COVID. When you think about the problem and the problem that you're trying to solve with the technology, in their particular case, they had field workers all over the place. And the biggest challenge that they had is they needed to centralize for training. And that was a real challenge, because when they centralized for training, they were, obviously earning. There was a lot of travel involved to get them to where they needed to be, to get them on the yard to go do some training. And, they saw all-in-one as kind of this opportunity for them to distribute that learning experience to the field and not require that trip back to a central location on a pretty regular basis. We've seen that perspective be accelerated through the COVID pandemic.
Sure, absolutely. I'm sorry, Aditya, I think you had a point earlier that you wanted to raise.
Yeah, COVID has impacted the VR business a lot. We've been impacted. Our schools are closed because our business was based on going in and out of schools, carrying 60 plus headset with the machines and everything. So hygiene come with a great responsibility on our head, that we need to maintain a proper hygiene So we have our own UV sanitization area where we sanitize all our headsets first, and then there's a UV box. We keep them in the box after every use. So it has impacted the time duration what we initially calculated, and now it's taking more than double the time where we can give the experience. So I think the solution is, because this is a wearable device, and one after another, many people will use it. It's not like belongs to it's not personal device. It's like a common device which will be used with many people. So
Okay.
we are waiting for everybody to get vaccinated and this pandemic to get over. So that will really boost up the XR community.
Okay, thank you. I wanted to touch perhaps on the specific aspect of onboarding students, like particularly the scenario where an educational institution has got access to, has acquired a new XR learning experience, and is are bringing students into that experience and onboarding them for the first time. So any thoughts on sort of particular practical things that the educator should be thinking about in that scenario? So maybe Greg, you would like to start with that one?
Yeah, if we speak about amateurs, of course, we should first just provide some guidelines, some basic points. For example, the dizziness effect is a major impact a person might have during their first contact with the virtual reality environment. So there should be some basic guidelines in order to avoid some unpleasant situations. After that, yeah, if we got to use some equipment more sophisticated, for example, some more expensive headsets, or with cables or wireless or standalone headsets, we need to take caution on the users to be aware that the equipment should be secured and should be safe. So this is one aspect, and the other aspect is that the user should be educated at least at a high level how to use the equipment, especially if it is a controller or wearable glove or some other devices like trackers, how to manipulate those, and how to work more efficient on those aspects. Of course, it has to do also with the software capabilities. If there's a specific scenario that the student or the user is going to play on, she should be she should be aware of the expected actions. So in order to be as pleasant as possible and according to the plan.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that point about being explicitly linking the aspects of the XR experience back to learning outcomes or course curricula and so on is important to fix that in the learner's mind as well, to integrate the XR aspects of learning experience with the more general aspects of whatever discipline or topic that they are learning. Aditya, for your clients and for the deployments that you've made in the educational space, what kind of practices have you seen around learner onboarding that you've seen work well?
Yes, we have a 20-minute VR training session with kids where we give them the headset and show them a video how to wear it, what are the safety precautions, what they have to take, and try to settle them down, because not everybody is used to VR. Somebody have vertigo and other kind of fear. So we take care of that account and give them a 20-minute session where they just calm down and try to wear a headset and be in a very soothing environment where they just interact with few objects and area to get accustomed with the headset, the vision, and overall general controllers, how they need to use them. So that's how we try to take it slow with kids and have a 20-minute session.
Okay, that's interesting. So obviously there's a gradated or a gradual exposure that that progresses
Yes.
with the session. So it's a gentle introduction and then ramping up, and that seems to be effective. Very good. And
Yeah.
Tony, then from an onboarding perspective, from your experience, what have you seen work well?
Yeah, so I mean, we deal with this a lot in consumer research, academic research. You know, obviously, you want to make sure that the user is comfortable and well understands their environment before you expose any stimuli. So we started introducing this new concept, and it's been in use for the last couple of years. It's called Ready Room, and basically, what it is it's a controlled space before stimuli that is meant to introduce the concepts that are present within the actual simulation to the user. And this might just be basics like, you know, here are your controllers, this is how you use them, through to, you know, if I'm going to make you articulate products that you can potentially buy off of a shelf, or, you know, review them, or, you know, in a shopping type of experience or something like that. I'm going to, you know, have you pick up boxes and other types of items and demonstrate that you have the ability to rotate them, place them back on the shelf, those types of things as well. So we've found that reduces the amount of VR exploration, especially when we're trying to conduct a study, by introducing all of the core concepts that they're going to be exposed to in the you know the simulation, and getting that kind of excitement and exploration complete before you start your study, or, you know, whatever you might be doing. So we call that Ready Room, and we've been using that the last few years successfully to kind of alleviate this particular problem.
Great, very interesting. It's an interesting approach. Again, as I suppose, as Aditya says, it's a slightly different take on that acclimatization process, if you like, for people who are new to XR completely, or who are new to a particular educational XR experience. So thank you everyone for that. Tony, I'm going to stick with you perhaps on this next point, because one of the things obviously that relates to accessibility of XR for educators is some sense of you know, improvement around learning outcomes, or return on investment, or, you know, however you want to couch that particular phrase. And obviously, data gathering and data analysis forms a big enabler, or a big part of that. So I suppose the question is around how can educators make best use of analytics and learning assessment in XR to get more out of educational XR experiences?
Yeah, I think spatial analytics can be used in a lot of different ways, from, you know, measuring human performance and how a particular student does within an experience, all the way through to UI and UX for developers, and understanding the level of comfort and understanding that a end user has with a particular simulation. Sam Watts from the last panel made a comment: the easiest way to get kicked out of my lab is to mess with somebody while they're in VR. And I thought that was really interesting point he made. That, you know, level of responsibility exists with every piece of content that you make. It's important for developers to build things that are comfortable. It's important for developers to build things that are not confusing, and to make sure that those first VR experiences are positive ones that people are going to be excited about getting into on a regular basis. Data analytics is really different for this particular industry. You know, if we think about the evolution of metrics from web to mobile, you were talking about like page views and bounce rate, time on page, those types of things. You moved into mobile, you started getting into like touches and taps, and maybe understanding the funnel. You know, maybe you could tap into things like gyroscope or something like that to imply, you know, some sort of behavior. But, you know, when we start getting into VR, AR, we're well into, you know, kind of full scope of human behavior, full scope of how human interaction.
David, I could add some topics here.
Please do, Greg.
This is applied, of course, in advanced research topics, and for example, the data analytics, I could agree with Tony, are very important, but a lot of efforts are performed in future aspects of data analytics, for example, to expand the hardware capabilities and get more data in order to use them for any purpose. For example, we have deployed recently pilot for teaching robots how to perform actions based on the hand movements. So this is one aspect that could be applied in virtual reality. For example, you could use the data collected by a wearable solution in order to provide some patterns and educate people based on that without physical presence. So this is an education aspect. And the other topic is that a lot of efforts are performed in the analysis of several data collected from human body in order to test the anxiety or other aspects while present in a specific situation, maybe in phobia or other.
Absolutely, yes. And it's interesting, obviously within XR and in all its forms, the richness of the data set that can be gathered and the number of different sources, as you mentioned, Tony, is an order of magnitude greater than perhaps other media, which opens up great opportunities then for more tailored experiences, but also more insightful ways of gathering information on the effectiveness and the positive outcomes of someone undergoing a particular experience. Aditya, to do data gathering, data analysis, performance analytics form part of your work too?
Yeah, that's the most important part here, because we do a pre-experience and post-experience data. We collect the data, like we have a set of questions which every children fills up the form, and over there we ask them what they know about virtual reality, have they experienced it before, how much they know about the software or the hardware tools, what is their vision for the future learning development. We have set of questions which we ask them before the VR experience and post VR experience. We have set up forms which we want to know how was their experience, what they want to learn more, how they can connect this in the education sector, and what are their ideas, what they want to see more, what are the difficult topics which they feel can be solved through virtual reality, immersive technologies, interactivity, physics, chemistry, science. A lot of questions we have. So we keep this data as a key source of developing all our future content. So here, gathering feedback from your customers or the experience is very much important.
That's brilliant. Thank you. So thank you to everyone for their contributions on that. In the interest of time, I'd like to move on to, I guess, the final major topic of our discussion today. So we've looked at, we talked about in terms of accessibility from an educator's perspective or an educational institution's perspective, in terms of acquiring XR hardware, software, setting up experiences, deploying experiences, onboarding learners. But I'd like to look at the other, I guess, main aspect of, or what we'd think of when we hear the term accessibility, which is more from a learner perspective and maybe brings in aspects of accessibility, in terms of user comfort within XR experiences, how you go about designing user experiences, user interfaces, content creation to support that. Also supporting learners perhaps with certain sensory preferences or disabilities. So I'd like to talk maybe about that as a general topic for the remainder of this session. So I'll open it to the other panelists in terms of what recent innovations do you think have improved XR accessibility from a learner's perspective? So perhaps, Aditya, do you want to start with that one?
Yeah, I believe VR is not for everybody. As for my experience is concerned, like not everybody is very comfortable wearing a headset. Many people have phobia of wearing something and getting disconnected with the outer world. So yes, we need to educate people how comfortable it is, and these are nothing to be feared of when they wear it on their head and get disconnected with the outer world. Vertigo is a big issue what we have faced with people once they wear the headset and they need to move, they're not very comfortable, and they immediately remove the headset. So we need to educate and take the preference of people with their age and their background. So over here we are working on filtration, people with interest in XR medium, VR medium, people who are into gaming or animation background, creative background. There are more people tend to enjoy the VR experience more. People who are not educated in terms of XR VR, they tend to not feel comfortable wearing a headset. So over there, we try to filter it out, and I believe once the headset becomes more easy and lightweight, easy to control, people will enjoy it more and it will be more comfortable for people to wear it. So this is what my take is on the hardware side.
So do you think that some of the recent improvements in reduction in headset weights, increased comfort, smaller form factor, have you seen this having a positive effect in that sense?
Exactly, it's improving. Like if you go say Oculus One and with the controllers and everything, it was a big problem for people to set it up. If you go beyond the sensors, you get disconnected. Then you jump to some other location. Comparing to Oculus Rift S or 2 and HTC, the weight issue is a lot. HTC is much more heavier and bigger device compared to Oculus. Now, I saw they are bringing in their third version, which is much more compact and lighter weight. Even the controllers are going away, so you just have few sensor in your fingers, and you don't need to use the big controller like a joystick, which you need to hold in your hands. So things are improving for good, and I believe that this technology will take over the way we see and experience the world around us, and it will shrink to just the eyewear or glasses.
Yes, and do you think the wider and more general availability of things like hand tracking have improved those aspects as well? For many of your deployments, do you see your users finding that a more natural and intuitive form of interaction?
Yes, like with the 6 DOF hardware, and then we go for 8 or maybe 12 sooner. So the ease of use and the comfortable you are doing the experience is also depend upon the content or the software side, how easy it is and how real you can relate to the content or how much you can enjoy it. So it's a good combination of hardware and software. So you can wear a very high-tech hardware, but the content what you are viewing is all crappy and not well designed, will not give you a very comfortable or enjoyable experience. So the hardware side, they are also dependent upon the software content side, which should complement the hardware rather the other way around. So we are also pushing the boundaries of the hardware to give the maximum comfortable experience or enjoyable experience for the user with the available hardware.
Thank you. And staying on that hardware theme just for a moment, then perhaps if I turn to Greg, because obviously a lot of your work in this domain in terms of providing additional specialized support for learners. I imagine kind of the work that you've been doing and the particular kind of wearable peripherals and so on that you've developed must support this quite significantly.
David and Aditya for the comments. I could start by highlighting the remarkable work being done in highlight companies and factors in the area of virtual reality. The hand tracking has done, the hand tracking by cameras has evolved a lot. There are a lot of algorithms that have improved a lot. But in the very end, there are a lot of restrictions. For example, in some enterprise-based solutions, not having a very reliable solution in the hand tracking causes a lot of problems. Actually, you need the controller, and the hand tracking is an additional component. So this is a great obstacle for workers and employees to perform the work in virtual reality like they could do with their hands. This is the point we enter the market. We provide a very accurate solution in the finger and hand tracking part that is coming to revolutionize the interaction framework, since the user could use their fingers to touch objects, manipulate objects, and any action you could do in the physical world. We come and enable that, and also adding on with the haptic and the best and most accurate haptic experience. We provide that sense that is so missing in the virtual reality aspect. So taking that into account, we deploy and make available the software components, as Aditya mentioned. They're very important because the hardware itself cannot stay there, and give the opportunity to developers and educators, scientists to deploy scenarios that are not possible with the current hardware equipment. So that's important. Hardware innovation is moving the market now.
Absolutely, thank you. And then finally, Tony, I mean, you mentioned earlier just regarding some aspects, perhaps more from the media or content side in terms of comfort or accessibility from a learner or from an end user perspective. So could you elaborate maybe on that?
Sure. I do have one thing to add just to what the panel's discussing there. One thing I would mention to the audience here is that it's not all or nothing. It's not VR or go home. I think that one of the things that we've been noticing kind of in the industry, or at least over the last year, is a hybrid approach to deployment. And we're doing it right now in Virbela. We're in a 3D type environment that could be consumed inside of a VR environment. And, some people choose to use the desktop application and so on. And we've kind of seen that across the board, including with some pretty large companies. And I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it introduces people to content. It increases your audience and accessibility to that content. And I think we all know, or at least we understand, being in the industry, is that the VR aspect adds a lot more. But it does increase the eyeballs on your experience and the impact of any type of investment that you make. So I think it's worth just thinking about the fact that it's not all or nothing with immersive technology. And I think that there's ways to kind of broaden that audience, when maybe hardware is not fully accessible.
Yeah, great point.
Great.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So everyone, I'm conscious of time here. I would like maybe the last couple of minutes to offer the opportunity for anyone in the audience who maybe has a question they'd like to put in the chat that perhaps the panel could deal with in the last few minutes available. So actually, while that's happening, I maybe just have a very quick follow-up question to the panel. How do some of these things change, or how have you seen some of these issues change between the kind of the single user XR experience versus the kind of group-based or multi-user XR experience, or what things come to mind, or what issues are raised when you think of comparing those two scenarios? I'll let anyone jump in on that one.
Depends on the work, right? Depends on, what it is that you're trying to simulate, and, would that benefit from multi-user collaboration or not? There's also different types of experiences as well, right? So there's guided assist on rails, where you're walking through somebody, on some sort of complex task or, training scenario. And then there's, evaluation perspective as well. So it kind of just depends on the type of content you're creating and why. And does a multi-user experience supplement that training experience, right? So if we're thinking about law enforcement or large things that require situational awareness between multiple people, that is clear value in why you'd want to put those people together.
Yeah, I could add just one sentence on what Tony mentioned. Just an example, imagine in large engineering tasks in large enterprises, for example, in aerospace, that the companies are not located in our area. Engineers from more than one places in the world can cooperate simultaneously in a multi-working environment, and imagine the benefits out of that. So,
excellent. Any final comments on that point, Aditya, before I close?
Yes, we haven't worked on this area before, but we got a lot of requests where people have asked us to create a content where we can collaborate between two departments. Like we got a opportunity or request to work for the Saudi Arabia police, connected with their fire and paramedics department whenever there's an accident occur, how they can get trained in an environment where there's an accident, and the police, fire department, and the paramedics department can do training all together in the same environment. The project was too big for us to carry on, but we see a lot of opportunities where VRXR plays a big role in training people and handling difficult situation quite easily.
Very good, thank you. So unfortunately, time has caught up with us. Just remains for me to thank the panel very much for all their contributions. Thank everyone in the audience for coming along and sharing the experience with us today. It's been very enjoyable from my perspective. Thank you all for coming along, and I will hand back over now to Heather to close.
Yeah, thank you, David. All right, so the main event has finished. We're going to stick around for just a few minutes to thank our panelists, but the live stream will now close. Thank you again to our videographers, Tony Cube Studios, and the YouTube audience.